Hey Internet, this is the first in a three-part series where I look at all the Knights of the Frozen Throne cards in Hearthstone. This first one will just cover the neutral cards. I have not seen most of these, but I am familiar with the Snow Flipper Penguin, the #1 cards come out of this game. It's got that beast synergy. Alright, so a lot of these are going to be pretty basic to start off. I like this card because there's not a lot of good one drops that have lasting effects. They're either broken or unplayable. This is like Abusive Sergeant used to be, except not completely broken, where he used to give you +2 damage just permanently, or and he used to have 2/1 stats himself. Basically, they decided, you know what, we're not going to alter Abusive Sergeant. We're going to make a supposedly new card and give you this instead. It's playable, not overly good. A Murloc with lifesteal as a 1/1, you might think, well, that's not very good. And just because in Murloc decks you're generally trying to rush your opponent down, you don't need to heal. As soon as you start buffing your Murlocs up, this is actually a decent enough card. I wouldn't necessarily play it myself because I don't play Murloc decks, but I can definitely see this showing up in Murloc decks. The Wretched Tiller. Whenever this minion attacks, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. I like this. This is like a Leopard Gnome, except you have to actually plan out your moves. You don't have a guaranteed 2 damage. This can be taken out with just being a 1/1 on the field that does nothing. That costs 1 mana, so it's objectively worse than the Snow Flipper Penguin, unless you can get an attack off, and then it actually does something. I like cards like this where you have to be active in order to get the effect. Now, the Fallen Sun Cleric, this is just a watered down version of the Shattered Sun Cleric. Give a friendly minion +1/+1. It's a 2/1, costs 2 mana, but this is actually a lot more playable than the 3 mana version. I don't really care about its stats, I care about the stats of the minion I'm trying to buff up. So being able to play this on turn 2 instead of turn 3 suddenly makes a game mechanic a lot more usable if you're playing a zoo deck, if you want to rush people down. It's not overpowered in any way, but it's generally a well designed card that will see a decent amount of play, I think. Tainted Zealot. Divine Shield spell damage +1. Now, the main problem with any spell damage minions is that they're easy to kill. That's basically what it is. So, this only having 1/1 doesn't really matter. You don't play spell damage minions for their minion stats, you do it for the spell damage buff. So, if you really want that and you want to make sure it survives, then you play this down. But the problem with this is that it's basically a much worse version of Blood Mage Thalnos. If you want a 2 mana 1/1 with spell damage +1, you play Blood Mage Thalnos because that also draws you a card. It's easier to kill, but that extra card draw means that yes, your opponent killed it, but you don't actually lose a card. So this, as compared to Blood Mage, I don't really see it being played much unless you haven't been playing some sort of Divine Shield deck. Otherwise, this is not really a good card. Tuskar Fisherman. Battlecry. Give a friendly minion spell damage +1. This, I think, is just an all around better card than Tainted Zealot. It's as if someone made Tainted Zealot and they decided, you know what, no one's going to play this trash. Let's give people a card that might be playable. So the 2/3 stats for 2 mana is already fine. It's hard to kill in trades with most things at that point in the game. And what happens is that you don't have to play a crappy minion in order to get spell damage +1. You can have any minion out there and get spell damage +1. That is a fine enough card. I like it. It gives a lot of opportunities to create decks in new ways that don't really exist with the spell damage minions that currently have. Now, you either have the +5 damage dragon thing, or you don't. You either get that combo off or you don't. And unless you have cards like this, which allow you to have a lot more flexibility. The Hildnir Frostray, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, don't really care. Battlecry, freeze your other minions, 3 mana, 4/4. They keep trying to push cards like this. Playing a 4/4 on 3 mana, it's not that good. It's not that good. And yes, if you have no other minions on board, this is a decent enough card. But honestly, this is almost as playable as Millhouse Mana Storm. At what point in the game do I want to have a card in my hand that freezes all of my minions in order to get a 4/4 on the board? At no point in the game. There's no point in the game where I want that. So, interesting concept, interesting drawback. You can't play this on turn 3 if you have nothing else. You can play this on any turn if you have nothing else. But there are simply better 3 mana cards, and this doesn't synergize with anything, I don't think. Maybe there'll be other cards that synergizes with, I don't know, but as of now, it doesn't have any specific word. It doesn't. There's no real reason why you want to play this. The Death Speaker Battlecry. Give a friendly minion immune this turn. This has so many uses, man. Who cares about its stats? This could be a 1-1. This could be a 1-1, 3 mana 1-1. You give a friendly minion immune and you play a minion yourself. That's a really good card because it opens up a lot of possibilities to trade. It's essentially like giving a minion Divine Shield. Uh, I mean, it might as well be labeled that. It's a 1-turn Divine Shield, and you get a minion on the board. You get 6 stats on the board. That's a fine enough card because you can play by itself. You got minions on the board. You can all of a sudden do some sort of damage that your opponent was not seeing coming. I like this card because you got to think about it. Your opponent's got to think about it. And that's a well designed card. The Vrykul Death Rattle. If it's your opponent's turn, summon a 2/2 ghoul. This is the first of the cards we're going to see where stuff happens on your opponent's turn. I like that mechanic a lot because it really makes both you and your opponent think of when this card should be killed. You've got to think in terms of playing it. Is this going to get killed on my opponent's turn, or do I have to trade it on my turn in order to get rid of one of their minions? And obviously you want to try to get minions like these taunt so that your opponent is forced to give you that 2/2 ghoul. Now, if it just had a death rattle summon a 2/2 ghoul, that's not very exciting. It's not very. Nobody's really thinking about that. It's just, yeah, it's got that death rattle. But this adds a lot more nuance to the way this card is played. So the Grave Shambler, whenever your weapon is destroyed, gain +1/+1. 4 mana, 4/4. This seems like complete ass. This, I, if you're playing a weapons deck, you don't really want cards like this. What you want is to just be rushing them and going face. So this is only good if you're on the verge of losing. If your opponent is destroying your weapon in a weapons deck, you've got bigger problems than giving. That you get a 4 mana 5/5 is what you get out of it if your opponent destroys your weapon. Or if you destroy your own weapon, that's also the possibility. So there is that option. But again, in weapons deck, those are generally very low cost decks. So you're not going to really be playing 4 mana cards that don't do anything else unless something bad happens for you, like you losing your weapon. Generally, you want to keep your weapon. So this might see some play in pirates. I don't know, but it's not a pirate, it's an elemental. So where would you see play with this? You really wouldn't see that much play. The Grim Necromancer. Battlecry. Summon 2/1/1 skeletons. This reminds me of Shadowverse a lot. They have a lot of cards of this nature. I'm surprised they haven't added a new word for these type of cards, undead, because all of these cards are undead. None of them have the undead marker on them. I don't know why. Obviously, skeletons are going to be undead. Grim Necromancer is going to be part of the undead genre, but for whatever reason doesn't have that. Other than that, I don't have a lot of commentary on this card. Obviously, it's the type of thing you'd run where you want to buff your own minions. This might be useful in, say, Druid decks or Paladin decks where you're running hand buffs. Otherwise, this card's not overly good. It's not bad, but it's along the lines of that 4 mana that summons a 2/3 and a 2/1 or 1/1 boar, whatever it is. I forget what it's called. It's essentially another version of that. But, yeah, it's alright. The Night Howler. Whenever this minion takes damage, gain 2 attack. That I I think this card is significantly better than the Grave Shambler because this allows you to be proactive. This allows you to A, play it in some sort of warrior deck where you've got Whirlwind or things of that nature, and B, you power up as you kill your opponent's minions. That's a really powerful effect, and it's done well because as you're killing your opponent's minions with this card, it also gets closer to death. I like that. Probably not that powerful, but in arena it might be good. In normal play, probably not going to see that much use. The Wicked Skeleton Battlecry. Gain +1/+1 for each minion that died this turn. I have not seen this card before. I haven't actually opened any expansion packs in this deck. I've played a few normal games, so a lot of these cards are new for me. The Wicked Skeleton, I've seen them try to put cards like this, and they're just they're not very good because of the high mana that you have to have with them, and you've got to sacrifice your minions. So this might be good if you use it with I don't know, Whirlwind or sack all your minions. Or let's see. If you have 6 minions on board, you've already got massive board control. And if you have 6 minions on your side, kill none of your opponent's minions, this becomes a 7/7 for 4 mana. That's about the best case scenario, where normally you're probably gonna have like 3 minions on your side, 3 minions on the enemy side, you kill everything. You get a 4 mana 7/7 that can be silenced. People don't really run silence, so very likely when you play this, it's going to be around a 4 mana 4/4. That's probably how it's going to go down, or like a 4 mana 3/3. Um, I suppose it would have to be even numbers, wouldn't it? Probably. In any case, I don't know, dude. Wicked Skeleton might actually be a lot better late game than on turn 4. For example, if you have Brawls, or if you have Flame Strike and you can coin this out, you can get a lot more power. But I don't really see this being played on turn 4 ever. The Bloodworm, the lifesteal mechanic, which is a new mechanic they added this time. Oh, it's already mentioned up here, but you do damage and you heal up your hero. It would also be interesting to see minions that have lifesteal for themselves. So, for example, they do damage to an enemy minion and they heal themselves for that much. It'd be very difficult to balance that. It'd be very easy to make that broken because you just buff them up and now you have an unkillable minion. But a 5 mana 4/4, again, they keep throwing these 4/4s out there. It's not good. 5 mana 4/4 is not good unless you buff this up. We do have some buffs coming up, but by itself, this minion is terrible. Even with the lifesteal effect, it's just too easy to kill. On turn 5, you need something more powerful than this, like 5 mana 5/5, for example. The Cobalt Scalebane. At the end of your turn, give another random friendly minion +3 attack. This is like that 1 mana or the 3 mana 1/3 that gives a random minion +1 attack. That card is unplayable. This card is very playable. Even if you have no minions on board, 5 mana 5/5 is fine. Okay, that's already enough power to get what you want out. It's a dragon, so it's got that dragon synergy. And if you happen to have a minion on board, well, +3 attack permanently is a lot. Okay, if you have this on board for 2 turns, you buff up +6 to your minions. All of a sudden, you can make trades you could not have made before. I see this getting played. I expect to see this getting played in a lot of decks, but we'll see. Skelemancer is already a monster, especially in Arena. I've played only a few Arena games, but whenever this comes out, you really have to think about how to properly deal with it. If you don't have a silence, the main thing you want to do is ignore it, but if you do that, it gets buffed up. And now instead of killing an easy 2/2, you've got to kill like 3/3 or whatever it may be, and then your opponent gets an 8/8 skeleton. But you do have to choose when you get that 8/8 skeleton because if you don't choose it properly, then they may get it a turn early. They get an extra 8 damage a turn early. What I don't like about this kind of mechanic is that it does put a little bit more pressure on your opponent to react instead of you making plays where you think, okay, my opponent has to kill this on this turn, thereby giving me an 8/8 by that turn. So there is that aspect, but beyond that, pretty decent card. The Sunborn Valkyr. Battlecry. Give adjacent minions +2 health. And one more thing I want to say about this is that Blizzard has struggled making good drawbacks with cards. For example, playing a 5 mana 8/8 is really powerful, and obviously the drawback is you have to spend 2 turns in order to get that out. You either need more than 5 mana, have something that triggers a death rat on your turn, or no, you can't trigger it on your turn. You got to trigger it on your opponent's turn. So you spend 2 turns to get an 8/8 out for 5 mana, and you don't get to use that 8/8 until turn 3, right? Well, it depends. Like your opponent can choose when you get to use your 8/8, which is a very interesting concept. Sunborn Valkyr, Battlecry. Give adjacent minions +2 health. It's a pretty straightforward card. Um, it's like a playable version of heal all your characters for 2 health. Honestly, giving my minions +2 health permanently is better than healing them for 2 health because A, if they're damaged, they get healed for 2 health. B, if they're not damaged, they have an extra 2 health and now they can't be killed. This is playable, not any sort of broken though. The Venomancer, 2/5 with poisonous. Um, Again, if it didn't cost 5 mana, if this costs 4 mana, this might be playable. With it costing 5 mana, I don't know, there's better options. Also, the Snail is a better option. 2 mana, 1/2 with poisonous and taunt. Serves the same function. By the time you're playing a poisonous card, you're probably in bad shape. So, with that being the case, you want a cheaper poisonous card than this. It's, I don't know. I don't see this becoming any sort of widespread within decks. Spellweaver. Spell damage +2 for 6 mana. See, I don't want to spend 6 mana for spell damage on a card that's easily killable. On turn 6, I need something far more impactful. So you play this on turn 6, you have +2 spell damage. Then what? What spell do you cast for 4 mana? Well, you can't cast it on turn 6. So, say you cast this on turn 10. What spell do you cast on turn 10 that would heavily benefit with +2 spell damage? That's right, there really aren't any. I mean, say you cast Hellfire, well, you just killed your own Spellweaver, and you spend 10 mana to clear the board. If you're going to do that, there's easier ways to do it. I really don't know what card this would really synergize with, given the mana cost of the Spellweaver. It doesn't have a lot of board impact when you play it, and it's hard to keep it on a board. And if you play it late turn, where it can synergize with something, well, you probably don't have any really good cards. You can play one extra card maybe and synergize with that. I don't know. They keep releasing all these 4/4s, and they must know that 4/4s aren't very good. But whatever. Necrotic Geist. Whenever one of your other minions dies, summon a 2/2 ghoul. Again, I really wish they had added an undead section, because eventually I'm gonna want to create some sort of synergy between these cards. Maybe they'll add that in the future. Maybe like they retconned elementals into the game, they might do that with undead. But they keep adding all these undead cards. Undead is not a new word in the game. That's interesting. Anyway, whenever one of your other minions dies, you summon a 2/2 ghoul. This is like drawing a card when one of your minions dies, except um, you summon new minions on your own side. For 6 mana, this is okay. This is very okay, because think about it. If you're going to have a lot of minions that die, you're going to be running some sort of zoo deck, which means you probably don't want 6 mana cards. You especially don't want 6 mana 5/3 cards in your deck. That's not very powerful. So the only real use I see out of this card is in Arena, where it's very minion heavy. People just play minions on curve. You may already have minion board control, in which case this might be useful to you. But I don't know. Unless you buff it up like with Bone Mare, it might not be that good. Now, as far as Bone Mare goes, this is probably one of the best cards to come out of the expansion. A 7-man 5/5 by itself is not very good, but this is 9/9 stats in total and a taunt. You can play this with any other card, and that other card instantly becomes good. 6 mana 4/4, that's not very good. You buff it up with Bone Mare, 6 mana 8/8 with spell damage +2, all of a sudden that's a great card. And it doesn't matter that this is a 5/5 because it's behind a taunt. The only real drawback from this card is that you need to already have board control in order to get use out of it. You can't just play it on turn 7. But other than that, it's an amazing card. I like this, dude. The Happy Ghoul costs 0 if your hero was healed this turn. Um, See, the problem with this is that you're almost definitely not going to be playing on turn 3. Say you're a priest. You heal yourself on turn 3 for 2 mana. Or you heal yourself on turn 2 for 2 mana. Well, you might as well have just played this card for 3 mana. Yes, you get that extra 2 healing, but is it really worth it just to get a 3/3 on board? I don't think so. So, I mean, there's some combos you can get with this, but this really isn't going to dominate the board. If you happen to get 2 of them out at the same time and heal yourself, that makes it worth it. But just playing one, I don't think is that useful. The Mindbreaker, this thing is killer in Arena. Hero powers are disabled. It's especially killer given all the new legendary heroes that have come out, where your hero power becomes amazingly better, unless your opponent's been saving a Mindbreaker, in which case, good job becoming a Death Knight. It doesn't really help you at all. So, by itself, not powerful. If you use it strategically, very powerful. Shallow Gravedigger, Death Rattle. Add a random Death Rattle minion to your hand. One more thing I want to say about this. The more legendary heroes that come out, the more you're going to see this used. Because it's got decent enough stats, and it shuts down your new found opponent in the form of their Death Knight form, where they just can't do anything. And if you don't have Death Knight yourself, then that's very useful to you. Anyway, Shallow Grave Digger is the card Ben Brode was super excited about. What does it do, you ask? Add a random Death Rattle minion to your hand. It's one of the awful, awful, awful cards that just adds extra randomness to the game with no skill. It's a low mana card that gives you the potential to either get something that's absolutely awful and does nothing for you, or gives you a game breaking card that allows you to just win by having something in your deck that you never plan on having in your deck. That's not good card design. I don't know why they added more of these. You're excited about this? It's an awful card. Get it out of here. Seriously, just remove this from the game. You remove cards like this from the game, Hearthstone is instantly better. So just get rid of it. Keening Banshee. Whenever you play a card, remove the top 3 cards of your deck. Um, they tried this before. They have tried this before, except the other one was a 5 mana 8/8 Fell Reaver. Your opponent plays a card, they remove the top 3 cards of your deck. This is a lot more playable because you can control whether or not the cards get removed, not your opponent. So you control the drawback, not your opponent. As a 4 mana 5/5, that is very much playable. But the problem with it is that you've got to kill it off pretty fast. So the drawback for your opponent is that they can't just leave it on the board because you'll do 5 damage to them every turn. Eventually, they do have to react to this, but they can just let you break your own cards if you want. And since you don't have a lot of control over what cards get removed, it uh, it just has a very balanced drawback, I think. But I don't know. They might have considered making it just remove the top 2 cards of your deck instead of the top 3. Also, I don't know why they say top 3 cards because it's random. It doesn't actually mean what part of your deck the cards are in. Could be the bottom 3, same effect. In any case, Phantom Freebooter Battlecry gains stats equal to your weapons. I've got this once in Arena. I didn't understand how it worked. I thought you became the weapon. So, for example, if you have a 1/1 weapon, I thought it would become a 4 mana 1/1, not a 4 mana 4/4. Um, since it's a pirate, you are going to see this get played. A 4 mana 3/3 pirate is already playable, but every deck that's going to consider playing this is going to have weapon buffs, which means that you're both developing your weapon and your pirate. And given that they've added this into the game, that must mean that Blizzard thinks pirate decks are getting a little weak. Because I see this as a buff to pirate decks. It gives you more versatility and lets you further synergize with your weapons. Um, I don't know that I want more pirate decks, but whatever, dude. Serenite Chain Gang, Taunt, Battlecry, summon a copy of this minion. Obviously, you want to use some sort of hand buff paladin, things that can buff minions that are in your hand before you play them. Because the battle cry occurs instantly, so it's not like Echoing Ooze where you play it and then you buff it and then it creates a copy. No, you play it then it creates a copy. So this is like a worse version of summoning those feral wolves that Shaman has, where it's 3 mana summon two threes with taunt. Except everybody can play this, and it costs 4 mana. If you're really playing a taunt deck, there are better taunts you can play. I don't know about this card unless you have some sort of hand buff deck. Ticking Abomination. What some of you may not realize is that this actually has synergy with the other A-Bomb card, with the Taunt A-Bomb. So you play this behind the Taunt A-Bomb. It can't be killed. And if you happen to want to trade it off yourself, then you have a 2 damage AoE for all the other cards, because this will kill the 5 mana 4/4 with Taunt that deals 2 damage to everything. Which means that you kill off all your minions, but also you do 2 damage to all of your opponent's minions by sacking 1 card into your opponent's minions. That synergy is interesting. Other than that, the downside of this card is really well balanced to the point where you really can't play it in any sort of Zooey deck. You have to be very careful playing it with any other deck at all, because I mean 5 health. Most cards do not have more than 5 health. So I don't know. I like it, but I don't. I'll play it, but I won't. Does that make any sense? Probably not. Cool. Next card. Corpse Razor. Battlecry. Give a friendly minion Death Rattle. Re-summon this minion. Okay. This card obviously synergizes with everything. Absolutely every card synergizes with this because You trade a card into your opponent, and you still have that card, and you got a 3/3 on the board. Basically, it's a resummon your own minion card, with the caveat being that if you don't kill it off instantly, then your opponent can silence it. But a double death rattle, for example, you place on death rattle, you get another death rattle. Um, Especially with minions that summon minions on the death rattle with a corpse raiser, just makes this a really powerful card in the right decks, especially death rattle decks, obviously, because you get those death rattles twice. Bone Drake, death rattle, add a random dragon to your hand. Again, I don't like cards like this. Add cards to your hand and deck that you didn't plan on having in your hand and deck. And it's not cards that your opponent has either. They're just random cards that exist in the ether, and now all of a sudden they exist in your deck. Just based on stats, this card is decent. The 6 mana 6/5 is just verging on playable without any effects. Adding a random dragon to your hand without needing any dragons in your hand makes this very much playable. Having this be a dragon means you can synergize with any dragon decks. They probably only added this into the game because people weren't really playing dragon decks anymore, so they wanted to throw a bone. That was not on purpose, but it should have been. And this is the result. Not overly good, not overly bad. Is it going to make for some interesting things? Maybe. Is it a well-designed card? No. Adding random cards that don't exist in anybody's deck is not a well-designed card. And by that I don't mean like special cards like these. I mean just random cards in general. Not a well-designed card. Drakari Enchanter. Your end of turn effects trigger twice. That, I don't know. 3 mana 1/5. So by itself, it's not good. If you top deck this and you don't have anything to synergize with, this is an awful card. It's gonna bring your deck down. It's gonna cause you to lose a lot of games. But it's almost like Bran, except I don't know. I really don't know what to think of this card because it has more survivability than Bran. Same mana cost, less damage output, but you don't play Bran or this Enchanter for the damage output. And your end of turn effects trigger twice, but there aren't that many end of turn effects in this game. So this will see a lot of nuanced play. You can maybe pull off some interesting combos, like for example, Cobalt Scalebane, but there really aren't that many cards in this game that do this. So I can't see this getting a lot of play just because it doesn't have a lot to synergize with, which is why it's not overpowered. If there were more cards of this nature, it might be really good. You might see it in every deck, but because there aren't, you won't. Corpse Taker. Battlecry. Gain taunt if your deck has a taunt minion. Repeat for Divine Shield, Lifesteal, Wind Fury. Uh, yeah. I This ordering of the words I don't think is correct. When I've seen this card played, you gain Taunt, then Divine Shield, then Wind Fury, then Lifesteal. That seems to be the order. I've never seen it gain Lifesteal before gaining Wind Fury, so that's my only real comment on this. They need to change that. Otherwise, it's it's a very easy card to kill. So it seems really powerful, but it's easy to kill, which makes it fine. Death Axe Punisher. Battlecry. Give a random Lifesteal minion in your hand +2/+2. This is the sort of card that makes you actually design decks to have synergy with each other. It's the antithesis of cards like this, where instead of having random cards in your hand, you do have a random effect, thereby making the game non-completely predictable and uh, appealing to people's sense of gambling, their natural desire to gamble, because people just naturally find that fun, even though they hate getting unlucky. But you have to actually plan out having lifesteal minions in your hand, which makes this card infinitely better designed than a card like this. Beyond that, I don't know. Would I really play it myself? I don't really play lifesteal cards, so I wonder if this synergizes with the new Jaina Death Chord card, because all your elementals become lifesteal minions. If it synergizes with them, I might see this in Jaina decks, but beyond that, it's not overly good because there simply aren't that many good lifesteal minions in this game. Meat Wagon, Death Rattle. Summon a minion from your deck with less attack than this minion. So, on the Death Rattle with less attack than this minion. So, you have to buff this up. If you don't buff this up, this is not a good card. You don't want to summon a 0 mana minion. The only difference, the only time you might want to summon 0/7, a 0 mana minion, or a 0 attack minion, is if you want a summoning portal. This could be a sacrifice to get a summoning portal. I like the concept of having sacrifice minions in this game. I do like that. I just think that this card is not the sacrifice minion we were looking for. It's interesting. It's a good little starter. I don't think it's any sort of good, though. This seems like a trash card. A Rattling Rascal. Battlecry. Summon a 5/5 skeleton. Death Rattle. Summon one for your opponent. That, I think, is a perfectly balanced card. So, here's the first thing about this. You see how I keep ragging about these 4 mana 4/4s? Look at this card. You get a 4 mana 2/2 and a 4 mana 5/5. So it's instantly better than all these other crappy cards. But it's balanced because once it gets killed, once you lose 2/2 of that 7/7 power you just put on the board, your opponent gets 5/5 power as well. Unless, of course, you happen to silence your own minion, which I suppose you might do, but that really doesn't exist outside of Priest decks because they're really trying to push Purify. And yeah, this might get the most amount of use in Priest decks, but really I think it's playable in any deck. It's especially playable in Arena where your opponents are unlikely to have a lot of board clears, which means you get those minions on your side of the board, your opponent probably doesn't get a minion on their side of the board. The Tomb Lurker, 5 mana, 5/3. Battlecry, add a random Death Rattle minion that died this game to your hand. So this could be Death Rattle minion that your opponent died, with the way I'm reading this. I've never seen this card played in the game, but I'm assuming that's how it works. And this card is again better than a Bone Drake because you have to point out which of your minions died. It's like a mini Yogg, not Yogg, N'Zoth. Trip's favorite card to make any bad deck playable. Just add N'Zoth. In any case, you add a minion that actually got played in the game and died during the game. That card I like because you get control over what it does. It's a random effect that you can control to the extent where it gives you something useful, unless your opponent sees this card and plays a Death Rattle minion that you don't want to have, that you can then have because your opponent played it. It's a decently balanced card. I actually kind of want to try out some decks with this and see what I can do with it. Furnace Fire Colossus, 6 mana, 6/6. Again, these stats automatically make it playable. These are the stats you need to have a card playable without any extra effects. But let's see what its actual effect is. Battlecry, discard all weapons from your hand and gain their stats. So by the time you get to turn 6, you really want board control. And if you have a bunch of weapons in your hand, you don't want to play all of them. You don't have time to play all of them. You don't have time to hit your opponent with all the weapons in your hand. So even if you have one weapon, say it's a 3/2. Well, now this is a 9/8 for 6 mana. It's one of the best cards. Even if you have a 1/1 weapon in your hand, okay? That's a 6 mana, 7/7. So if you have no weapons, this is playable. If you have even one weapon, this is already worth more than its mana cost. Because to get a 7/7, you normally have to spend 7 mana. So that's already an upgrade, which means that this card is actually pretty good if you have any weapon in your hand at all. Nerubian Unravel, 6 mana, 5/5, spells cost 2 more. I really disliked that they took out Naxxramas, the one card that made spells cost 5 more for a turn, because it adds a lot of extra strategy to the game, both in terms of you and your opponent, where you know on turn 6, I've got to be watching out for this card. But it only lasts for a turn, so you have to be careful as to not play it too early and not play it too late. This card has the same effect, but it happens every turn, and it doesn't make all spells unplayable. It doesn't make it so that you just can't play anything. It doesn't completely shut your opponent down, which is why this card I really like, because it has that same strategy that both you and your opponent have to think about all the time when you're thinking about playing spells. but it also makes your spells cost more, so you have to think about that yourself as well. That's the drawback of the card. I think it's a well-designed card. I want to see it get played. Probably won't that much, but it's a well-designed card, I think. Skulking Geist, the the killer to Jades is what this card is. Destroy all one-cost spells in both hands and decks. Obviously, once you get to turn 6, if you're playing a card like this, then you don't really care if your one-cost spells are gone. But if you're thinking of playing this card, your opponent probably has Jade Autos. That's what this card is for. Blizzard decided we don't know what to do about Jade Autos because we're bad at card design. Um, and we have string spaghetti code that we can't edit easily. So here's a new card that completely destroys your opponent with very likely no drawback to you. And again, it's a 6 mana 4/6. These are fine stats. 6 health is when you get to start getting to good cards. So it can trade with most things, and it's hard to kill. And it gets rid of your opponent's nonsense. So I can see this game played quite a bit. It's along the lines of a dirty rat. It's a dirty geist. That's what that is. It's a more controllable dirty rat, except with spells. Okay. One more thing. I'd like to see more cards like this in Dirty Rat come out where you can break your opponent's combos without without just having completely random effects. So you know what your combo your opponent is going for, and you have to say play 2 cards in order to activate an effect like this, where you just destroy your opponent's 3 mana cost spell. So for the next turn, all 3 mana cost spells in both hands and decks are unusable. So or they're unusable for 2 turns. It's like a combination of these 2 cards. Instead of this happening every turn, this happening only 1 turn, you have say an effect like this happening for 2 turns, or happening for 3 turns, and then it stops happening. I'd like to see cards like that get introduced in the game. It would add a lot more strategy, I think. Prince Kelsa, Battle Cry. If your deck has no 2 cost cards, give all minions in your deck +1/+1. So here's the thing about this. If you're going to be playing this card, um, you you're either going to play it in a rush deck, in a zoo deck, in which case you want 2 mana cards because those are very useful to you, or you're going to be playing it in a deck that has a lot of spells early on and no 2 mana minions. And considering that 2 mana cards are not that good, except in rushing decks, then this is playable but not great. That's where it's at. Playable but not great. So another Prince Taldaram. 3 mana, 3/3. Just by itself, just by its stats, this is already playable. Battlecry. If your deck has no 3 cost cards, transform into a 3/3 copy of a minion. I haven't seen this played, and I don't understand this effect at all. You're a 3/3 copy, so this is like the summon a 1 copy of a minion in your deck, except this minion becomes it. It's a 3/3 copy of it. Um, the problem with this is that there's a lot of good 3 cost cards. Having no other 3 cost cards in your deck makes this almost unplayable because the effect it gets is not very powerful and the drawback is huge. So I don't see this getting played a lot. I can't imagine it's going to get played that much. And next we have a doggy, the Undead Dog, which is actually a beast, not an undead card. Death Rattle. Add a random Death Knight card to your hand. So these are the Death Knight cards down here. Um, just based on its stats, this is an awful card. Not just because it's a 2/2, but because you have to have this die before you get the Death Knight card. But I haven't actually seen all these, so let's find out if it might be worth it. So first one, Death Coil. Deal 5 damage to an enemy, or restore 5 health to a friendly character, obviously an Arthas sort of thing. But you have to wait a turn, at least a turn, before you get this sort of thing. 2 mana, deal 5 damage to anything. It's pretty good. So you end up spending 6 mana, get a 2/2 on the board, deal 5 damage. It's okay, I guess. It's not that good. Death Grip. Steal a minion from your opponent's deck and add it to your hand. Do you get to choose? Is this a random minion? Do you get to see your minions? Do they show you like 3 cards and maybe you choose one? I haven't seen this played, so I don't know how it works. But this This kind of makes it so that this card is awful, but you can get a good card out of it. I don't know. Obliterate. Destroy minion. Your hero takes damage equal to its health. I love this card, man. Just because it's a perfectly balanced card, I think. Say your opponent plays a 10 health minion, or they buff it up to 10 health. What do I do with this? I need an easy way to kill this, and I don't want to completely lose my turn. I want to prevent developing the board at all. So what do? Well, you spend 2 mana, you take that 10 damage like a man, and you kill your opponent's minion. This is a pretty well balanced card, but think about it again. You spend 6 mana, you had 2/2 on the board, and you take 10 damage to kill a minion. Is that good? I don't think that's good. Death and Decay. Deal 3 damage to all minions. Pretty straightforward. Decent enough card. It's like Hellfire to all enemies, rather, not all minions. It's like Hellfire, costs 1 less, and it doesn't deal damage to you. It's a strictly better version of Hellfire that you have to play a card first to get, so I think it's a balanced card. It's fine. Anti-Magic Shell. Give your minions +2/+2 and can't be targeted by spells and hero powers. Obviously, the can't be targeted part activates afterwards, unless they mess up their game, in which case you can never play this card on a minion, but I would assume you can actually play it. So, first thing first. This happens to all your minions. If it happened just one, this card would be awful. But it gives to all of your minions, which makes it the singular best AoE minion buff that you can play because you can play it on 4 mana. So most cards that allow you to do this to all your minions cost a lot more, normally like 8, 9, 10 mana. The other part of this can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. If you're playing a card like this, you probably have some sort of rushy deck, meaning that, well, no, you could play this in any deck. So this card makes the Doge fine, but again, this is a 4 mana 4/4 after you play another 4 mana. I don't know. It's an okay card. 5 mana Doom Pact. Destroy all minions. Remove the top card from your deck for each minion destroyed. Obviously, if you play this card, you are in some dire straits, but it may be one of your only chances to survive the game. And if you're in a position to play this, then you don't actually care that you're removing cards from the top of your deck because you're about to lose. So the downside of this card is almost non-existent, just because it's either lose or play this card. This gives you one more turn to not lose. With that being the case, it's a pretty well-balanced card, I'd say. Army of the Dead. Remove the top 5 cards of your deck. Summon any minions removed. I hate this card. I've seen it played. It's extra randomness where your opponent has no idea that they're going to get this card. They don't know what cards are going to be removed from the deck. They haven't designed a deck specifically for this card. And the minions that get summoned, they don't know what minions are going to get summoned. So either they get absolutely destroyed by this, or they just win the game off this. And considering that it costs 6 mana, that makes it so that you could even play this on turn 5, you can play this on turn 6. All of a sudden, you get complete board control, and your opponent can't do anything because it was all random, so you can't plan around it. I don't like cards like this at all. Frostmourne. Death Rattle. Summon every minion killed by this weapon. Obviously, if you play this card, you want to go face. Face is the place. Don't kill minions. End of story. Alright, we have 2 more princes left. Prince Valinar. Battlecry. If your deck has no 4-cost cards, gain Lifesteal and Taunt. This is like an even worse version of Prince Taldaram, because 4-cost cards are very essential to decks. You don't want to run decks that only have 1 4-cost card, which only gains Lifesteal and Taunt. Why would you play this? Why would you ever play this? A 4 mana 4/4 with Taunt and Lifesteal is not a good card, man. Get out of here. Remove this from the game. Witch King, 8 mana, Taunt. At the end of your turn, add a random Death Knight card to your hand. This is a playable Arthas because you instantly get this. This is like Ysera, except significantly better because the main problem with Ysera is you have to wait until turn 9 to play it. So it's got a lot more survivability, but by the time you're playing Ysera, you're probably in a position to win the game anyway because you've got control of the game, or you need a miracle card to survive. With Witch King, this has a lot more versatility. You can play it by itself. And one thing I want to note about this is that it's strictly a better card than the Druid 8/8 with taunt. At one point in time, Ironbark Protector was the singular best taunt in the game in terms of its stats and its playability. Now, this is a prime example of power creep where you've got all that, and it gets you one of these. And it does it every turn. So, yeah, Glitch King is an amazing card. A lot of people are calling it the best cards come out of this expansion. I'd probably agree because I see this in basically every deck. There's if a deck has the new cards, it has Glitch King. Because why would you not play this? It's an amazing card. Even if you're running a rush deck, no matter what type of deck you're running, if you play Glitch King, your deck is instantly better. So these are the uncollectibles, where the skeletons I've mentioned, ghouls, Skeletal Enforcer, and Skeletal Flare. Beyond that, I'm going to get to the class cards in future video. I'm going to do 45 and then 45 or maybe 50 and 40 because each class has 10. So I don't want to just cut off and halfway through a class. But for now, that's the end of this video. So thanks for watching. Subscribe because I got more videos coming your way, baby.